Good morning, everybody. I see it's 10:30 according to the clock on the wall, and we'll use that one for our official timing purposes. My name is Buck Malick. I'm the chair of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment. Today is February 24th, and we are in the St. Croix County Government Center. This is the place that was advertised for the February meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I always make it a point to ask if anybody has a reason to think that this meeting was not properly published in advance. There are laws that apply to open meetings and laws that apply to zoning boards, and we need to follow them, of course. So if anybody has a reason to think this meeting was not properly published, would you please speak now? Otherwise, we will assume there has been no problem, as there has been no problem for the last 30 years or so. So we are called to order, and we will proceed to the roll call. As I say, I'm Buck Malick. I live in the town of Hudson in St. Croix County.
I'm Joe Miller, citizen member, Town of Hammond.
Dave Nickum, citizen member, Town of Baldwin.
We may hear from various staff members, so I'll ask them to introduce themselves and establish their voice on the recording at this time.
Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator in the Community Development Department.
Ben Hetzel, Land Use Planner, Community Development Department.
And it's just possible, I suppose.
Ryan Hugland, Community Development.
Okay, Ryan, thank you. We have minutes of meetings held on 3 separate days in the past. Board members, have you any reason to object or correct those minutes? No. If not, they will stand deemed approved as they've been provided. We have 2 matters to deal with today, and on one of them, the Town of Somerset matter, the engineer is also the engineer for the town in which Joe lives. And so there's a possibility of a sort of perception of conflict of interest, and he has therefore said that he will be recusing himself from that particular matter, that Town of Somerset case. So there'll be 2 of us left, and that's a quorum, so no problem there. But it does have an influence on the order of our handling the matters today. There would be, it would be an inconvenience to Joe to be out in the hallway waiting until we finish the Town of Somerset matter, so I'm going to propose to the board members that we will first take the Town of Croix matter, and then Joe can participate in it, and then he can simply leave before we get to the Town of Somerset matter. Is that okay with you, board members? Yeah, okay. I hope it's not too great an inconvenience to the audience. To the Town of Croix folks, are there some of you here on that matter, the Lindis matter? Yes. Are you expecting anybody to be here who's not here yet? All right, then it shouldn't put you in a bad position if we take your matter first. So that's what we'll do, and I'm hoping that you Town of Somerset folks can accommodate us. You don't have to stay in the room, but you're certainly welcome to do so. All of those preliminaries having been said, did I forget anything? All right, we'll call on Mr. Wozniak to make the presentation of the Lindis case file to us.
Yes, board members, public and applicants, we have for the board's consideration a request for 2 conditional use permits included on the agenda. And I'll note that I am pulling up a slightly revised version of the staff report. We received some refinement of the proposed landscaping tree plantings to that we believe conform with county expectations, and so the staff report was adjusted. Also, we received a letter which we were anticipating from the Minnesota DNR, and I'll reference that, but I'm going to pull up a slightly revised version of the staff report to what was included in the packet. Really substantially the same, but I think we've addressed, the applicant has addressed to at least staff satisfaction the landscaping. But let me,
Was that made available to the public early enough so that if somebody might have stayed home because they weren't aware of that change, that they would have had an opportunity to make a decision on it, Mr. Wozniak?
this came, the vegetation update, Ben, remind me when that came in? You want to turn your microphone on?
Well, really, the question is when it became public, when you put it up on the website.
Well, the vegetation plan came in like 2 days ago, or an updated version anyways,
Today is Thursday, so that was Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
And if I remember, Julie's the only one who can put those things up on the website. So it hasn't yet been made available to the public unless they came to your office to see it.
Now, I would mention, and we'll get into this a little more, but I would mention that I think we had, in what was on the web and available, we were calling out that there would need to be a revision to the vegetation. And go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, correct. There would be a revision or more of a refinement in the land use permitting process, which would be required for the single-family dwelling. But, yeah, so that was why it was revised. And they provided us more detail.
Please flesh that out a little bit more. I'd just like to make sure that we are doing everything right here before we start into the whole file.
There was...
What did they provide that wasn't previously made available?
They provided a plan of planting 25 trees, which we didn't believe was substantial enough. That's what went out to the public. And then they brought back a planting of 50 trees. So that's what is different.
So the net effect was more trees.
More trees, yep, along with a replanting site plan. So,
And the replanting site plan has the same plan view, the plants are in the same place they were shown on the plan in the previous, previously made available to the public, or in new places?
we didn't have a replanting location plan that was made to the public previously.
So this doesn't relate to the rain gardens then?
No, no.
It relates to the lawn. Is that right? Or the sedges and grasses that were
Correct, yep,
proposed?
correct, yep, yeah.
Okay.
More relates to the, visually inconspicuous character for the Riverway.
Mr. Wozniak, did you have involved public on this file in the history of this file?
We
Were there
have
people
not
making
had
inquiry?
input that I'm aware of. Ben, you hadn't had any comments or from the public?
I know there are no letters in our file, but I'm inquiring beyond that. Was anybody showing an interest in this file who might have an interest in the vegetation plan?
No.
Nobody, no.
No. All right. Seems safe to go ahead. Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, very good. Just to get going with this, highlight the staff report. The property in question's 292 Salishan Drive in the town of Troy. This would be Lot 7 in the plat of Salishan. The lower, it's in the lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, and that's where the county's authority comes in on this. The Town of Troy, of course, administers general zoning within their town limits. The request includes requests for 2 conditional use permits. Conditional use permit for filling and grading 10,000 square feet or more outside the slope preservation zone pursuant to section 17.36 F3A6 of the Riverway Overlay District regulations. And the other CUP would be for filling and grading within 40 feet of a slope preservation zone, again pursuant to the 17.36 F3A5 of the Overlay District regulations. We included with the staff report, which I'm going through here, the applications, vegetation site plan, and DNR comment letter. And when I pull up a slide, we'll show that revised vegetation proposal, planting proposal. The request, again, is from Alex and Jamie Lindis, and they're requesting these 2 CUPs to construct a single-family dwelling and accessory structures in the lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District. The plan includes a swimming pool and notes a future accessory building site as well. And I'll clarify, the second CUP request is to fill and grade within 40 feet of a slope preservation zone to construct a stormwater retention basin. Just a location, a general location overview of where the site is located with Salishan Drive in this location. And there aren't any existing structures on the property, I'd clarify. We have a slide that illustrates some views from the river, albeit in a leaf-off situation, and the site location is called out. You can see it's pretty heavily wooded on the within the bluff slope preservation zone, and visibility to where this home is to be constructed is pretty limited from based on the existing cover, and you'll see what they plan on planting to replace trees that will be removed as part of the project. Regarding proposed structures, they include a dwelling, driveways and walkways, an in-ground pool, patio, attached garage, and a future 40 by 60 foot outbuilding. The proposed dwelling meets the maximum 35-foot height requirement, and I would note that total added impervious surface would be 26,100 square feet. The home site is set back from the cul-de-sac, Salishan Drive, and there's a longer driveway, and it kind of spreads out on the area that would fall outside of that 40-foot setback from the top of the slope preservation zone. Just a few key points. The closest point of all proposed structures is approximately 600 feet from the ordinary high water mark of the St. Croix, so it's outside of the 200-foot setback required in the riverway from ordinary high. The 100-foot bluffline setback, I would note that portions of the proposed improvements are within the 100-foot bluffline setback. However, those portions meet all standards to qualify for the reduced 40-foot setback per section 17.36 G5C2A. And the criteria that have to be met are noted here, and include the portion of the structure within a 100-foot setback, do not protrude above the bluff line as viewed from 250 feet riverward from the ordinary high water mark. And there's a couple elevation views on a subsequent slide here that illustrate that. And the structures are not located in the slope preservation zone, and applicant proposes to use building materials that are earth tone in color and of a non-reflective nature. We may have a little discussion about that as we proceed here. And then trees to be removed will be replaced and relocated to the 40-foot bluff line setback area to make the structure more visually inconspicuous. And I'll note that also the all proposed structures would comply with the 25-foot side yard setback. Again, I noted that there was a couple elevation drawings that show that view line from the 250 feet out from the ordinary high water, and that the structure conforms with the maximum height, falls within. Just a little more close up there. I note that the applicant must provide building plans in conformance with the ordinance requirement to the Community Development Department showing the structure height of the future accessory structure. That's that 40 by 60 foot structure they show on the site plan. Regarding the filling and grading that would occur, the net project area totals 1 acre, 43,560 square feet. And the closest point of the proposed grading is approximately 2 to 3 feet from the slope preservation zone, and the ponding area here is what that area would represent. The applicant submitted stormwater management and erosion control plans that are in conformance with ordinance requirements, and a DNR, I note a DNR NR 216 permit is required for 1 acre or greater land disturbance, and so we would have them provide evidence that they're in conformance with that requirement as part of the land use permit. Regarding stormwater management, the proposed plan is designed to infiltrate 100% of the impervious stormwater volume on the site for an 1.5 inch rainfall event, again per our ordinance requirement. The 26,100 square feet of impervious requires 3,265 cubic feet of stormwater storage and infiltration areas, and the applicant proposes 2 stormwater retention basins with a total capacity of 3,277 cubic feet, which would slightly exceed that requirement. Regarding the vegetation issue, the applicant proposes to remove 65 trees within the graded area per their submitted vegetation removal plan. The removal of the vegetation in order to allow permitted uses or conditional uses is allowed under section 1736 H8E4. Now, this would include 33 deciduous trees, 32 coniferous trees. Removal near the bluff line is not proposed in order to preserve vegetative screening of the proposed structures. Now, the applicant proposes replacing with 50 native canopy and understory trees compatible and comparable, and also a low-grow fescue mix or native alternative is proposed within the 100-foot bluffline setback. And stormwater basins will be vegetated with native plants specified in the Minnesota DNR Southern Mesic oak forest, grasses, rushes, and sedges category. Regarding the number of trees that's proposed, this is the the clarification we received a couple days ago, and staff find this an acceptable solution here to revegetating on the site, recognizing that, you know, there is a fair amount of area that's not available for planting, but this is a substantial amount of tree plantings and should largely work over time to keep the site visually inconspicuous from the river. Noted on this slide is the location of a proposed sanitary system and also vegetation removal locations. And largely the area is being graded, as I outline on here. Highlighted, I believe in red here, are the trees to be removed. And on this this plan, the proposed new tree plantings are identified with blue dots. And you can see some of these carry into the slope preservation area and kind of at the perimeter here between the at the roughly along the top of the slope preservation zone, riverward of where the house is going to be constructed and swimming pool area and so forth. And we think, again, this is a pretty good balance on revegetating to make up for tree removal that would be necessary to construct on this site. We have received a comment letter identified as Exhibit 4 from the DNR, and they are supportive of the staff recommendation on this. I'll note that we haven't received any comment from the town of Troy. We are aware that they received the application and had it in a timely fashion to review. In terms of actions available to the Board of Adjustment, your options here include approving the request with or without conditions, denying the request, approving one and maybe not the other, or tabling or postponing the decisions to absorb information gathered or request additional information. We've included in the staff report actually a list of 18 findings of fact, and I will just reminding myself the number. I'm not going to read through every one of these. Some of these are just information that's covered in the submittals in the application, but I'll touch base on just a few key ones. The 6 and 7 clarify what was requested by the applicant, and there's been a little refinement of the square footage of the stormwater basins per the plans. The proposed project location we note is not visible from the St. Croix River, and we do note the improvements in number 9 that are being requested, and also reference the net project area of 1 acre. Regarding maximum height in finding number 11, we're noting that the proposed dwelling would meet the 35-foot maximum height requirement, and also that in 12 that the structures meet setbacks from ordinary high watermark property lines and the reduced 40-foot bluff line setback requirement. And we're noting also that the portion of the structures within the 100-foot bluff line setback do not protrude above the bluff line. The applicant submitted stormwater management and erosion control plans in compliance with our ordinance requirement. And key to that change I referenced, number 16, the applicant proposes the removal of 65 trees and would replace with 50 trees, and staff recommends additional trees of mixed native varieties to decrease the visibility of the proposed 15,000 plus minus square foot structure. DNR, again, supports staff recommendations on this. And under number 18 in the findings, just our review criteria, the no grant of a conditional use shall violate spirit or general intent of the chapter. I'd note the proposed residential use is designed to conform with the standards of the Riverway Overlay ordinance, and therefore does not violate the spirit and intent of St. Croix County, Lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District. And next, in terms of no conditional use shall be allowed which would be contrary to public health, safety, or general welfare, or which would substantially be adverse to the property values in the neighborhood affected. We've noted here that the proposed residential use is designed to conform with the standards of the ordinance and therefore would not be contrary to the public health, safety, and general welfare. And going on in terms of whether there would be any issues with nuisance, the statement we've included in reads, subject to proposed conditions, the use is not likely to constitute a nuisance by varieties of noise, by reasons of noise, dust, smoke, odor, or similar factors. Temporary noise would be present during construction, as may be expected. And lastly, regarding any specific standards that the board would evaluate this on, a county land use permit will be required prior to construction and is subject to the standards in 17.36H. And filling and grading activities must be done in a manner to minimize erosion and sedimentation. We note that a state sanitary permit will be required to install a private on-site wastewater treatment system. And vegetation removal for the construction of the proposed structure shall be limited to the area within the approved land disturbance limits. And as shown in your submittal with the CUPs, and also would be confirmed within the land use permit. And lastly, the property owner shall record an affidavit describing the approved stormwater management, erosion, sediment control, and vegetation management plans with the County Register of Deeds within 30 days of project completion. So we've gone on to include a staff recommendation that includes, remind myself, I believe, 15 conditions. And again, I'm not going to highlight all of these. I know the board's read them. This is to act on the conditional use permits to allow filling and grading operations 10,000 square feet or more outside of the slope preservation zones, and filling and grading activities within the 40 feet of the slope preservation zones in the Riverway Overlay District, in accordance with plans submitted on January 3rd, 2022, and in accordance with the, again, the 15 conditions referenced in this staff report. And, you know, key in here I'd note is state sanitary permit is required for installation of a private on-site wastewater treatment system. The applicant shall revegetate with a minimum of 50 compatible and comparable canopy and overstory trees, and then the 216 DNR 216 permit shall be provided to Community Development Department, and also we reference the affidavit requirement on stormwater management and erosion sediment control and vegetation management plans. And we call out there shall be no filling, grading, or vegetation removal within the slope preservation zone, and the applicant's required to get other necessary permits, and any change to the current project details and plans shall require review by the zoning administrator to determine further requirements. The others are standard conditions, and I won't go through those unless there's any questions. Now, I did mention that the applicant has indicated that they believe they're proposing colors, exterior colors for the structure that conform with the earth tone color palette required in the Riverway Overlay District. Staff did have maybe a question, concern about some of the exterior materials are proposed to be a limestone material, and the concern was from renderings that the limestone appeared it may be lighter than what could be allowed under the color palette. The applicant's consultant construction company has some examples, a couple actual physical examples of stone that the board could view, and if you wish to set direction on this, otherwise they would have to work this out with staff prior to issuance of the land use permit. And maybe you could display those to the board. And the material to the right, I think, is the lighter, that is reflective of what was included on renderings of the proposed home. And the one on the left is a somewhat darker material that, frankly, I would say the one on your left, board members, I believe would definitely conform with the earth tone palette. The one on the right maybe is more subjective, and it's on the lighter side and lighter than typically those colors in the palette.
Board members, questions for Mr. Wozniak?
Yeah, on the retention pond, is there a provision there if it exceeds the limits of the rainfall? Has it got like a overflow drainage or spillway?
Ben, you'd like to speak to that?
They haven't identified that, but that's something that could be scrutinized in the land use permitting.
The plans do indicate that there would be a weir.
Ben, would you, do you plan to testify, sir?
I can, if necessary.
Good. In a moment, just save that question and we'll get it on the record by having it spoken through the microphone. Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Say, along that line, Joe just mentioned about the retention pond, isn't one of those built right on the bluff line?
It's about 3 feet from it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's, now I can
And
run
the
back.
other one's on the opposite side of the house.
Over in this area, and that bluff line, I believe, is the dotted line that kind of runs along here.
Well, one of them had the red line that showed the bluff line. I guess my question is,
Right here.
yeah, isn't that a little risky digging that close to the bluff line?
Well, that's probably why Joe wondered whether there was a provision for an armored spillway, you know, for when it does overtop. I was going to say something, and I might as well get it out now, and that is that the standard that our ordinance requires is the 1.5 inch standard, which has been around for a long time. 1.5 inches of rain within a 24-hour period, I believe. And I'm sure you've all been hearing about the way storm events have been changing in our area, and now the 1.5 inch is probably, it would probably be appropriate to consider changing that and raising the standard to make sure that the water has a chance to soak in, not run off, you know. But then there are, and of course, there's a very small over-design here, about 5 cubic feet or something like that, if I remember right. But then remember that this is not right next to the water line. This is separated. I imagine you both noticed the other property that we litigated so much about is downhill from it, and quite a ways away. So there's a great long slope in which water has yet another chance to soak in, so long as the ground isn't frozen or something like that. And then they're planning to put those extra 25 trees on that side, so that once they take root, they provide some erosion prevention properties. So I too think it's kind of a mixed bag. It'd be kind of nice if it were over-designed, if it were deeper or wider or something like that, but it does meet the requirements of the ordinance.
I did notice when I visited the site that the neighbor on the right side, and I'm not sure where the property line is, but it was pretty open to the river. There seemed to be a lot of vegetation, but I think that's on the neighbor's property, so.
On the upstream side?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, why don't we hold those thoughts and see how the testimony develops and the evidence. Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
I'd just like to clarify, there is a proposed weir on the rain garden closest to the bluff line, so kind of an overflow protection identified on the site plan.
All right, then our process here is typically that we ask for those people who would like to speak in favor of the application to speak next. And after they have finished and dialogued with the board as may be appropriate, for those who are neutral or opposed or anything like that, until we've heard from everybody in the room who wants to be heard on the topic. I always, or in the last few years, I've begun saying that if you choose to ask us a question, that doesn't necessarily guarantee we will give you an answer, because we don't consider it to be our mission to educate the public. Our mission is to make a decision. But we do welcome questions, because of course a question may lead us into an inquiry of something we didn't think about or whatever. Anybody who speaks should know that we definitely don't decide things on a hand count or a voice count or that kind of a process. The numbers may be relevant, but they certainly are not dispositive. In fact, the law prevents us from making decisions based on what's popular and what's not popular. So what we're trying to do here is to do the best thing we can for St. Croix County residents, both those who are already here and those who are proposing to move in. So with all that philosophizing, would anybody like to speak, first of all, in favor of this application? Particularly if you have something to say that's different from what Mr. Wozniak said. If you don't like what he said, if you want to suggest something that you think the board ought to overrule the staff on that one, that's really important. We certainly need to talk with you about the color of the stone, and if you think we don't have a good enough understanding of the overflow weir on the detention pond next to the bluff, why, feel free to comment on that. Those would seem to be the only things. When we get to talking about color, I can supply lots of background about why we have the palette that we do have and how it's not the last word on the subject by any means. The law is a little more complex and nuanced than that palette is. Okay. Would anybody like to speak now, kind of in favor of this application? Please, sign in first. We don't, all testimony is given under oath, that it is the truth, nothing but the truth. But if you sign that piece of paper, then we've already got it. Plus, we've got a spelling of your name, subject to legibility concerns. But then we don't have to administer an oath to each person who comes up. So anybody who thinks they might want to talk today, sign. There's no penalty for signing, but there sure is a penalty for not signing and then testifying. And then use our microphone. We have a recording system, yeah, once in a while, people have rights to sue. Do you need somebody to help you with the...
I'm assuming it's on.
It is on. Go ahead.
Hello,
Who are you, please? And
Hello,
what-
my name is Pat Schumacher. I'm with Norson Construction, located in Wayzata, Minnesota. I am a senior project manager for the company in their custom homes division. And we are fortunate enough to be able to build the home for Alex and Jamie Lindis. And I just was going to say that it's been a pleasure working with your staff and getting through this process. They've been very helpful, and I guess I just wanted to comment about that. And I think we've done everything that we could possibly do to supply the information on a very timely basis for them to review and get to us to be able to be at this meeting today. We do have the consultant that we worked with. His name is Ty Dodge. He's with Auth Consulting. You maybe know him from previous projects, but I'm sure he'd be available to answer any questions. He's been very involved in all of the design of the civil work required on a complicated project like this. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and thank you for considering this approval. Thank you.
Good. Well, are you planning to call some others, or are you the person we should direct all the
I wasn't planning
questions?
on calling any others.
Okay, then
unless
why don't we work with you if you're willing to stay there for a little
sure.
while? I think it's very positive that your client has seen fit to add more trees. In general, the reason why the ordinance is because the whole plan behind the Wild and Scenic Riverways Act is that the view from the water should be preserved. Now, there are lots of views. Certainly, the view from a residence to the water is a significant view. The view from, let's say, the Hudson Bridge, or the view from other people's docks on the other side of the river. Other possibilities exist, but the way the law was constructed, it was done as though this were a national park, and the value to be given priority was the value of the experience of the park visitors. So it's view from the water which drives the requirements. And so along about the time, shortly after 1972, when the federal designation was made, studies were done of publics as they traveled on the water and they looked toward the shore, and they found that there was a great consensus that the views that people valued the most were the views right at the ridge line and right at the water, that folks didn't object too much if they saw a building in the mid-height, but what caught people's eye tended to be the ridge line and the water. Here we have a ridge line construction proposal, and that's why vegetative screening is important. So there you have it. That's the background for that. The background, so having those additional trees is definitely a positive thing. I can see where it's It's not easy to plant trees and have them catch and take hold and grow. And some years we have these dry years, and unless you water the trees an inch a week, the darn things are just going to die, and the best efforts have come to naught. But the applicant's efforts to do something with trees is great. Another big important priority for the Riverway is water quality, and there are a lot of things that go into water quality, but one of the primary degraders of water quality is erosion, when it carries soil and nutrients that may be bound to the soil particles into the water. And hence, that's a big reason why we pay a lot of attention to designs that infiltrate water as near to the place where it falls, where the snow or the raindrops fall, is where we prefer to have them soak in. Of course, if they fall in a driveway, they can't very well soak into the driveway, so that's where we go to retention ponds, detention ponds, rain gardens, and other man-made ways to try to improve infiltration of water. So if there's the potential on this site to enlarge those water infiltration sites, that would surely be positive. And maybe there aren't, and you know, we can understand that. And the law is what the law is, and you don't have to do more than the law requires, and it would be unfair of us to demand that. Board members, do you have anything you want to say on the subjects that I've mentioned here, that the visibility issue, the vegetation, or the water retention? Okay. Why don't we turn to the color thing? As you probably know, again, backing up to the origins of the Riverway, it was determined that the view from the river should reflect, should reflect a particular view, a natural view as it was in 1972, and to the extent feasible, should be designed to sort of preserve that view, recognizing that structures would become more dense as time went on, and lots became smaller, and for a variety of reasons there would be more man-made structures in the lower Riverway. Nevertheless, an attempt should be made to do the best possible to preserve colors that look natural. And so a phrase was developed and embodied in the law, which was earth tone or summer vegetation colors. And for 30 years, that's all that we had to work with. And then around 5 years ago, the St. Croix River Association applied for a grant from Minnesota, and it got money, and it hired a lady who sought, among other things, to see if we could put more specificity into that and thereby simplify people's lives, because boards like this in every community on the Wisconsin side and every community on the Minnesota side, 35 of us, we're all having colors proposed at our meetings like this, and we'd look at them and we'd say, yeah, that one's good. Oh, that one's not good. And, you know, there was a chance of human fluctuation and all that kind of stuff. So we decided to see if we could come up with a safe harbor palette of colors. And using the efforts of this grant, the lady hired for the grant, a lot of colors were looked at, and we started with the Pantone company colors. Those of you who are involved in the printing industry might recognize that. And once a year, the Pantone company puts out their color of the year, and it gets attention for about 30 seconds and then the world moves on. But there is this Pantone set of colors. And then we, to deal with other mechanisms, we came up with colors for screens, like television screens and smartphone screens, and colors for printers with their inkjets and so on, you know, to match up to the Pantone colors. And so there now exists a palette of colors which, if people choose any one of those colors, they don't have to go any further. Nobody needs to say, is this earth tone or summer vegetation? If it's on that palette, zap, it's approved. But that's not all, because behind it, the law says earth tone or summer vegetation. And so anybody who wants to propose a color that's not on the palette is free to do so. But they have the same burden that used to be before we have the palette. They need to persuade the board that the color they propose is an earth tone or summer vegetation color. Okay, they retain that burden of proof. They don't have the safe harbor of saying it's number 7 on the palette. So here's where we are today. Our applicant has proposed a color that's not on the palette, and they have the burden of demonstrating that it is an earth tone or summer vegetation color. And I think when we look at those stones there, we say those aren't summer vegetation, so we're talking about earth tone. Are they earth tone colors? Now, what kind of earth tone colors? Well, not the earth tones of Siberia or the ones being exposed in the Ukraine as bombs are going off today. Not the colors in Southern California or in Mexico, but the earth tone colors of the St. Croix Valley. Naturally, that's what we're talking about. Now, if they are a stone that is common in the St. Croix Valley because it's a natural stone that's exposed by weathering and stuff, well, I guess that would be the end of the discussion, wouldn't it? If it's a stone that's already found here, or it's a sand that's already found here in the St. Croix Valley in normal abundance, well, then it must be an earth tone color that meets the criteria. Are these stones mined in the St. Croix Valley?
The stone on your right is Fond du Lac, which is Wisconsin.
From down by Mankato, yeah, right. And how about
I
the
would
one
have
on
to-
our
I would
left?
I would have to check on where that's coming from. I'm not sure.
Okay, so maybe it's not that simple. We can't just say.
I am not aware
right?
of any stone that's mined in St. Croix Valley.
Or just found, I mean, we have the granites up in the,
Yeah.
in the northern part of the valley, and we have some sandstones across from Stillwater, you know, that are just exposed by the weather. So we don't get an easy out there either. You can see I'm looking for, is it on the palette, is it this, is it that? And no, it's not that simple. So we've got to make a harder decision. And now I guess it comes down to human judgment. If we do decide that, let's say the palette on our left does meet the definition of an earth tone color, for our purposes here, how do we make that objective? Is that, I mean, it looks like the box or the board that it's mounted to has some kind of a label on that. Well, no.
It was,
I'll rely on you. It's some company that
It's a-
supplies it?
Yeah, it's a company that is a masonry supply company located, in southern,
And that's
Metro.
where you'd buy it from
Yeah,
if
we buy
you were
it from
for this
them.
project?
Yeah.
So if we specified that's okay, Mike's staff could say, well, just show us the invoices that show that's what you got delivered to your site.
yes,
We have no subjectivity anymore in that.
right,
Okay, that'll be a solution for us
right.
if we can go that way. Yeah. Now, there's another thing to be said. Not every not every home that we deal with, or every remodeling project that we deal with, is hidden, for the most part, behind a bluff, like this one is. Now, so in terms of visibility from the river, the whole riverward part of this property, up to the 40-foot from the bluff line, is screened behind the land that exists out there. So from that standpoint of the rationale behind the choosing of this color selection, we probably have more flexibility than if it were a house being built right down on the river's edge. I don't know, does anybody want to say anything? Otherwise, I'm about ready to say, I think the one on our left would be perfectly acceptable, and it would be great, but I want to hear, we all want to hear input before we set this up for a vote.
I just got a quick question. The one on the right is a natural stone of some sort?
Yes,
Oh, sure, they're all mine.
they're both natural stone.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean, but, okay, if,
It's a limestone product, correct?
yeah. So my question is, would it be possible to get that in a manufactured concrete that has a specific color put in it, with the same texture on the face?
Oh. Well, or that raises a different question, a somewhat different question. Does the texture matter to your client? Do they, and is the one on our left not available in the rough texture? That's what Joe's getting at here.
I wasn't aware that the texture of the stone was a point of contention for the approval of the earth tone.
Okay, so it doesn't matter to your client if we choose the one that's smoother, the one on our left.
At this point, I was just raising the question for a topic of discussion.
Sure. They probably prefer real stone rather than cement, but,
Yeah, the home is designed for full-depth stone. This is a sample of a stone, but they cut it, thin, so actually we can carry it, and bring it in, so.
do you want a chance to confer with your clients? I have a sense that maybe you're just a shade unsure what their preferences are in this. We won't listen while you talk, if you want, or we can even take a break, but do they care if we just pick the darker one? Good point about the surface. Yeah. Because the law doesn't speak to surface,
Yeah,
just that it'd be non-reflective.
yeah, that's what I say, if County Concrete or somebody can manufacture that and put the right color in it.
They could have anything, anything is possible.
Yeah.
But I guess they like rock.
I was just going to qualify that staff thinks both of these products are beautiful, high-quality products. It's just the color, is the color consistent with the expectations for the earth tone palette? That's really our issue.
Well, I think I speak for the board members too, that, we're delighted to see real rock. I mean, that would seem to be a premier building product.
Mike, is that palette on a sheet of paper, or?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Do you know where it's saved, Ben? You could maybe save it into that folder. Pull it up.
Yeah, we also have it, of course.
Bring a copy up.
It's, he could show it on the screen too. I mean, it's available in, or it was once made available.
It's going to be saved in a certain spot for us to pull it up here. Ben's going to do that in a moment.
Yeah. So did you get any quick fixes for us?
It's like our packet materials, unfortunately, were saved in black and white, I didn't realize, but
Yeah.
I'll let you take a look at just illustrative of the rendering. That was
Yeah,
probably
that's
with
too
the
light.
material to the right.
Yeah, it comes out pretty light on that picture, but I realize that's not the final item.
This
is a lot Got any shortcuts for us, Ms.
I
Schumacher?
would like to comment or speak on behalf of our client Jamie here. Neither one of those stones have been a final selection for them. The one on the right closest to Jamie is the color that is probably more in her, what she would like to see us be able to put on their home. It is an earth tone, and I probably can see if we can find something that we can, find that's closer to the approved color palette. We don't, I just want to make sure that we don't have to put in writing that we're selecting A or B at today's meeting, but we want to provide statement that we will, work with the board on making sure that whatever is final selected is approved, and that we are, we understand that there is a requirement on the river view, and
So would you like to have us table this till next month's meeting and put
No.
off a decision?
no, I
And we'll
wouldn't.
do the color then, along
No,
with all of it? Step up, sir, if you like.
Neil Evinga, Norson's General Soup for Custom Builder down here. I guess our point is we want to proceed to try to get approval on the use permit. And if we could just have a contingency that we will work, documented, we'll work with the staff or whatever for final decisions to meet the earth tone requirement. We just don't want to rush our client into getting, today she has to pick that one on the left because she's not crazy about that. We brought them samples in just to see which way the board was going to lean. Do we have to get more towards that darker end of it, or are we going to be okay in that lighter end? And we'll work towards that, and just if we could work with the staff on that final decision. But we don't want that to hold up our use permit today.
And I don't like to put the staff in a position where they don't know what the board wants.
Understand?
So why don't we see if we can find another Pantone color today? That's going to be tough, I know it is. Because I participated in that other process, and there are, I don't know, something like 1,000 Pantone colors.
Just pulling up the color palette.
Yeah, those are the ones that are already pre-approved. And none of them quite matches that sample there.
So I guess my question is if, we get into some of these lighter colors. But I could also, to this palette, I could almost put like a green on the house and it falls in this palette. Does that make sense?
Say again, please?
If I was to select like this green up here, that would be an automatic approval?
Yes, that'd be one of the vegetation. See, there's two parts of the definition in the law.
Understand.
Earth tone or summer vegetation, yeah. Yeah, well, some of those kind of grays in there are probably really close to what you've got there.
On the right side, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna go with it next, you know, I get down to these two, or even up into here, that's getting pretty light to the one we're on the right.
And in the upper right, you know, the second column from the right, second one down, that
Right.
appears to be.
The
It would-
actual material, when you see it, is more variable than the rendering, which definitely looks lighter.
Yeah, and the smaller we make them, the harder it gets to do this job.
Because if you look at the top, I can bring it closer, but that palette she's picking up there, that top right one is almost that gray in there. It has that color in it.
Yep, yep.
And to go back to your point, sir, on, you know, it's sort of recessed from the bluff line, so it's not really on there. I mean, we've
Oh,
done
I
a lot
know.
of work to keep it tucked back behind the tree line, so it's not gonna be that billboard sitting on that bluff line.
Oh, we'd have to be a lot more sensitive if it were right down there at the water line.
Understand.
Or if it were fully exposed. Well, it'd never be fully exposed, but. Yeah, well, you know, you can go off with the staff and work with the approved list there and come up with something that fits the approved list, and you don't need a thing from the board.
I guess my question is when I'm using that natural varying color, because I could go to that top one and almost pick a color there that's in that top stone, you know, but then I go to a different stone and it's a little different, because it's a natural product, right? I mean, it's gonna have some variance in it.
Well, you can always have them darker, but you can't have them lighter, right? So it sounds like you'll be able to work with them with the approved list.
Staff, we're certainly willing to do that. I mean, I don't anticipate that we would come to an impasse on this. If we did, the worst case, we could consult with the board again, but I don't think that's necessary. You know, there's definitely willingness to conform with county requirements that the applicants exhibited through our review process.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
I just share, we hadn't actually seen the sample till today either, so we were going off the renderings.
Sure. It's not something you think about every day, and nobody is to be faulted for not coming in with the perfect solution right here and now. We're all kind of learning about this. This, of course, reflects also the DNR's position. Everything else in the letter from Mike Wenholtz appears to me to be adequately resolved. He obviously didn't see one of the retention basins on the plan that he looked at, but he emphasizes the earth tone color issue also, so there we are. Well, given that, I want to make sure we hear from everybody who wants to be heard here, but we may not have any issues to worry about. Who else would like to be heard, if anybody? I see a couple more folks sitting on that side of the room who haven't spoken. If you wish to speak, this would be your time. Otherwise, if we've heard from everybody, and if board members aren't about to open up some new topics, if those two conditions are met, then I would close the hearing, which means no more input, no more testimony, no more exhibits, and we move ahead to a decision. All right, it's 11:39 according to clock on the wall. I'm going to close the hearing. And board members, I'm going to ask if you think you have all you need and you're ready to make a decision. Yeah?
Yeah, I have all I need. I wanted to make a comment that I made earlier. When I visited the site, it seemed to me the neighbor on the left, or upstream, was more open. So in defense of this, building the structure, in defense of building the structure, I would say that they're better hid than the neighbors. But I speak a little out of ignorance here because I'm not exactly sure where the property line is, but it appeared to me it was more open, the river was more open to the people upstream than it was to him, than it was to this lot. So in defense of this lot, I'm saying this house is going to be hid more than the neighbor would be. It appeared to me.
Yeah, and I infer from that gives this board the latitude to be a little bit more flexible on this one than when we get the one on the next lot. We may be hedged in a little bit more in terms of our flexibility to adapt to the desires of the landowner. You know, every case we deal with is unique in some way, and this just illustrates that. Otherwise, I guess I'm thinking I could entertain a motion to approve and adopt the staff recommendation. And the understanding, of course, will be that the color palette will be worked with, and they'll find a color that meets the palette. Otherwise, we'll hear from it again. Okay.
I make a motion that we approve their application.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've batted around quite a bit. Is there more discussion? The motion has been made and seconded to adopt the staff recommendation. And I'll pause and say thank you, staff, for the kind of work up on a relatively complex project that there was, all the ins and outs were explored adequately so that the board had all it needed, and ultimately agrees with you too, so that's swell. Given that, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of adopting this should vote aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. It's unanimous. All right, thanks, good. We'll get you a letter, in a few days. Do we have any things that we need to deal with of a procedural nature for next month's meeting before Joe leaves today, so that he doesn't have to come back? I suppose I should ask Mike that. Mike, are there any procedural type matters that we should deal with while Joe is here? Because once he leaves, it makes no sense for him to be hanging around waiting to come back.
Don't believe, just checking our
Yep.
agenda and see if we had anything we were asking you to consider.
Well, not on the
Otherwise-
agenda, you didn't, no. I assume you're going to have enough business for a March meeting, but not one that requires us to set aside 2 days.
Yes, not 2 days, and I'm reminding myself what we got in.
I know we have a land division in Riverway that'll come to the board in March.
Oh,
Which would be a CUP.
The CUP, yeah.
okay.
And possibly a home occupation CUP, but that's all I can think of at the moment.
All right, thank you. So then, let's get ready to take this one. And Joe, do you want to make a statement for the record about your recusal?
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself from this upcoming hearing because our town has a contract with one of the members of the application.
Okay, thank you for doing that. It helps, to keep us, every appearance of doing things above board and out in the open, and no undue influences or biases, and it all goes to building respect for our processes. Thanks, Joe, and good day to you. Mr. Wozniak, if you're ready, and is this suitable to you and your client, Ms. Poppenhagen? So that we'll, although it's 11:45, you're willing to go ahead, and presumably we'll keep right on until we're done. All right.
Very good. The next item for your consideration, board members, is a conditional use permit amendment request from St. Croix National Golf and Events, LLC. And I would just call out, you'll notice this has a number that's a 2021, early 2021 number. And just to explain that, the applicant actually originally submitted a proposal that included other improvements besides what you're being asked to consider today, back in March of 2021. And there were some issues with ordinance restrictions on steep slopes and also the level of detail of the submittal, which meant that we couldn't proceed with consideration of the original proposal. The applicant has revised and scaled down their request, and I'll get into that here in the staff report. But what we're dealing with is St. Croix National Golf and Events, LLC, with their agent, Stevens Engineering, and the property at 1603 32nd Street in Somerset. This is part of Section 7 and 18 in the town of Somerset. And it's in the properties within a C3 commercial district. This is recognized as again, the St. Croix National Golf and Event Center. And I would note that the property in question is they own approximately 210 acres, 9 parcels. Although the improvements being proposed with this amendment are limited to 2 of their parcels, approximately 58 acres. Although the actual work is occurring on just a smaller part of that of those 2 parcels. And the request is for a conditional use permit amendment for purposes of expanding and remodeling existing structures and adding a structure for use in storing golf carts, pursuant to our general zoning, Chapter 15, Sections 15.285 and 15.550 are overall conditional use permit requirements. We've included with the staff report their application materials and also copies of decision documents for the original approvals and a subsequent expansion of the what was considered the banquet hall then and now really recognized as an event center. So originally the course was established in, approved in 1995. There were 2 special exception use permits, which we now use the terminology conditional use permits, and one for the golf course and one for the clubhouse. And then there was a addition to the banquet hall that was done in 2004. And I'll note also with the packet materials, we've included a copy of some meeting minutes dating to November from the town of Somerset, indicating that they've basically are recommending approval of the request. I called out these past approvals. Again, 1995, the golf course and the subsequent development followed, and then there was a separate one for the clubhouse, and also the event center was expanded. in 2004, and adding a kitchen and restrooms, and basically the structure footprint you see out there today. This is just a slide that highlights the materials provided with the conditional use permit application. I won't read through these, but just wanted to clarify, because we've been working with them for some time and had a variety of questions regarding topography, height of proposed structures, various questions that the submittal requirements address. Just some background on this. The St. Croix National operates a golf and event center. Offerings include golfing, food, wedding venue, and golf simulators. And past use of the property included the Snowcrest ski area that operated from the 1960s through 1984 on a portion of the current land holdings. And we've probably mentioned previously that the applicant has expressed some interest in reestablishing that, and that may be a future request from them if they so choose. The golf course, clubhouse, and event center and maintenance facilities and associated improvements, again, were developed in the 1990s and expanded in 2004 and obviously upkept since. The clubhouse expansion would expand the structure 5,763 square feet to better accommodate golf simulators. And there would also be a 2,100 square foot outdoor patio and a 744 square foot deck area approximately on the south side of the expanded golf clubhouse. They're adding a golf cart storage structure, approximately 5,000 square feet, and the existing event center would be remodeled, not changing the structure footprint or capacity, but basically improving it to better attract weddings or other events as part of their business operation. The portion of the site south of the existing maintenance building would be improved to add 99 additional parking stalls to meet parking requirements for the proposed expansion and needs of the operation to conform with county zoning ordinance requirements. And I note that there are several sanitary systems on the property now, but there would be a new sanitary system constructed to serve the expanded golf clubhouse. Just a site map here. Outlined in the red are the parcels that would include the entire site area, but we're down in this area where the actual improvements would be. The site has good highway access from 3564 and basically at the intersection of County V and 32nd Street, which provides access to the property. Here's a image of a site layout for improvements, and there's another image that will follow that will show the additional parking area over in here, but essentially you have an existing parking area and existing clubhouse. They're intending to expand the clubhouse and construct the golf cart storage building, and this is the location of the existing event center. This particular slide includes slope analysis. Initially, we had some concerns that would the work be going into slopes exceeding 25%, but the analysis provided and our staff review indicates that shouldn't be an issue for this, the extent of improvements they're doing with this proposal. Here's another slide, and you can see the golf clubhouse area, event center, and this is the additional 99 parking stalls. you have an existing maintenance building located here, just for point of reference. And there's an analysis of parking needs, and I won't read through this specifically, but I would tell you that staff is comfortable that this would conform with ordinance requirements to meet parking needs. And, you know, it does call out the amount of square footage or uses that are being accounted for. And, you know, it would, you'd end up with that needed 246 stalls. Just to run through some visuals of what St. Croix National is proposing. These are some renderings that they provided that give, you know, you're looking at views of the existing with the proposed clubhouse expansion. Another one here from viewed from the south and southwest maybe, and seeing the expansion with the existing clubhouse, and a little bit of a close-up from the side of the expansion area. Here's a floor plan of the proposed clubhouse expansion, and basically these sort of bays you're seeing would be golf simulator bays, and there's some seating area provided to go along with that. The first floor would total 8,015 square feet, with the addition accounting for 5,763 square feet of that. Basically, the existing is over here, so smaller than what is being added, and also patio deck square footage. The seat counts are referenced here to come up with a basis for parking needs. I would note that to serve this expansion, we have a slide that does include a drawing from a sanitary permit application that is currently under review by the county. And you can see improvements off to the west, sort of northwest of the expansion area, and to the south for a new sanitary system. We don't anticipate any major concerns. We're just needing a little additional paperwork for issuance of the sanitary permit. We do recommend that a condition be placed on the CUP, and which has been included in the staff recommendation, which I'll get to, which would require that the sanitary permit for the clubhouse must be approved prior to start of construction. This is just a real basic sketch of the cart storage building pavilion, just something that gave us a mass and height, sense of height on this. It would fall within the maximum 35-foot height. Another photo here of the existing event center, and we just wanted some clarification on height of the structure. Our plans dating back to the mid-90s and what we had on file, it was a little complicated looking back at the approval process. We're confident that the county approved this and was fully aware of it, but the paper trail wasn't as good as we would like or maybe have today. So we wanted some confirmation on height and materials. They have indicated they're intending to more or less match the exterior materials of the cart structure to the building, although we don't really regulate that, so that's really up to the applicant. This structure, the applicants indicated, accommodates seating for 250 people, and the facility was expanded to include the kitchen and restrooms back in 2004 again. It has its own sanitary system that's sized to meet the needs for their events and their staffing that would be associated with it. They're not changing, again, proposing to change the structure footprint or capacity. Regarding stormwater management and erosion sediment control, I note that the applicant provided some detailed grading stormwater erosion sediment control plans. However, they had a change in their engineering consultant that they were using, currently Stevens Engineers, but they had a prior consultant that left the area and is out of the picture, and for that reason, staff felt that an appropriate follow-up would be to require their new consultant to submit revised plans that that would be done via a land use permit approved by staff. Largely, it's a technical exercise. And based on the level of detail that the applicant provided previously, we're perfectly comfortable handling this. They have plenty of site area, and we more or less know where the water is going to be directed and have plans. We just didn't want to include them in the packet because they're labeled under agent or consultant that isn't involved with the proposal at this point. We would recommend a condition be included as part of the CUP amendment, if approved, that the applicant shall obtain a land use permit from the county to address stormwater management, grading, erosion, sediment control measures, and revegetation within the project site area prior to start of construction. A condition should be included in the CUP amendment that the applicant shall provide evidence of an NR 216 permit from Wisconsin DNR. Just to note the general vicinity of the project, there are other commercial uses that front on what would be the west side of 32nd Street that provides access to the St. Croix National Site, and also some C1 commercial zoning on the other side of the highway, and largely R2 residential zoning with rural residential properties. To the area where the improvements would be constructed, the nearest dwelling would be approximately 1,200 square feet, 1,200 feet, linear feet away, pardon me. Regarding agency review, we haven't received any comments. There aren't any shoreland areas or critical water resources, so we didn't necessarily expect input, but we did refer this. Early on, there were issues of additional wells being needed, but the proposal was scaled down, and that isn't an issue currently. And again, the project would require a construction site stormwater permit from DNR. No comments have been received by Wisconsin DOT or our county highway. The size and scope of this proposal, the site has good access. It's just off highway interchange, and accesses directly off of a town road, 32nd Street. I'll note that the Town of Somerset Board, again, took action to recommend approval, and you've seen a copy of the meeting minutes from November 3rd, 2021. Your actions that are being requested, your options for action, I should say, are to approve the request with or without conditions, deny the request, or table and postpone the decision to consider information gathered or request additional information. We've included a series of findings of fact and conclusions of law for your consideration to base your action on. And again, I'm not going to run through these because I've covered a lot of this material. In numbers 3 and 4 here, we reference the improvements being proposed as part of this request. And the golf clubhouse expansion, the cart storage building, renovation of their event center, and parking access-related improvements. The current facility, we call out the prior approvals, which are part of the record, and really we're suggesting that the conditional use, or formerly called the special exception for the construction of and operation of the golf course clubhouse, which was approved in November of 1995, would be the logical approval to amend as part of this action. And 6 and 7 are kind of standard conditions we include. I won't read through those, but can field any questions you may have. I just would note they did include a rendering that included details on lighting for the clubhouse expansion. And regarding our criteria for reviewing the CUP, regarding any specific applicable standards that would be considered by the board in your findings, we note 4 items here under subparagraph A. The proposed amendment to the CUP with all applicable standards would meet applicable standards of the C3 zoning district, the development standards, and any applicable use regulations. And we specifically note filling and grading must be done in a manner to minimize erosion and sedimentation. There is a lot of slope on this site, but the areas being worked are largely areas that have previously been modified and not necessarily going into new areas that haven't included part of the golf course or existing structures or parking or circulation. Second point, a state sanitary permit would be required, and application has been made, currently under review. Third, vegetation removal for the construction of the proposed structure shall be limited to the site area within the proposed land disturbance limits. I just note this is quite a beautiful piece of property. It does have a lot of topography, a lot of relief, but it's a kind of a, as golf courses go, quite a beautiful one. The property owner shall record an affidavit describing the approved stormwater management, erosion and sediment control, and vegetation management plans within the St. Croix County Register of Deeds within 30 days of project completion. This is kind of a standard requirement of ours, but we find it appropriate to call it out in the findings. Regarding how this might impact property values, this facility's been around for about 25 years, and the limited changes proposed as part of this proposal, staff would not believe would not substantially change the character of the neighborhood. Regarding whether there would be any nuisance impacts from this use, subject to the proposed conditions, the use is not likely to constitute a nuisance by reasons of noise, dust, smoke, odor, or similar factors. The areas of construction are segregated largely from surrounding residential uses by quite a distance. Nearest dwelling would be 1,200 feet and really on the other side of the highway. So we don't see an issue there. In terms of being consistent with the spirit or intent of Chapter 15, the use of the property is consistent. It's permitted as a conditional use within the current zoning, the C3 district. And lastly, here on findings, the use is a continuation of the current use of the subject property and is consistent with the recreation and hospitality uses that have been operated for the past 25 years. Regarding staff recommendation and conditions, the staff recommend approval of the requested conditional use permit amendment. to file 79-59 to allow expansion and remodeling of the existing golf clubhouse and addition of the patio and deck structures to the clubhouse, adding a structure for use in storing golf carts, and adding 99 parking spaces in accordance with plans submitted with the CUP application 2021-003, subject to the conditions 1 through 11. I would note regarding these conditions, I previously mentioned that a sanitary permit would be required, and the applicant would need to obtain other applicable permits, including, for example, the stormwater permit from DNR and also building permit from the town of Somerset. And we include with these commercial uses a standard condition regarding properly handling effluents, fuels, oils, solvents, that sort of thing. We do have a condition which includes some detail regarding stormwater management, grading, erosion, sediment control, and revegetation. And I know you've read through these, so I won't call out each of these bullet points, but I just bring them to your attention. And then also, just kind of a standard condition that outdoor lighting needs to be directed downward. We have details on lighting for the clubhouse expansion, but if any additional site lighting is provided, that condition would apply. And also, the applicant hasn't called out any specific additional signage that they would propose, but we're referencing that they would have to comply with the current zoning ordinance provisions for signage if they do add signage. And they would have a year to begin construction in 2 years from the date of approval to complete. And the last three are just standard conditions we include with our CUPs. I won't go into them unless you have any questions. At that, representatives of the applicant are here. The agent, Stevens Engineers, has Angela Poppenhagen, and she can field any questions you may have on this proposal.
Any question, Dave?
Well, I'll make a comment. It is a lovely spot. That is true. Where you're going to add an extension on the clubhouse right on the edge of that bluff, I would question that, but I can't question it too much because the clubhouse that sits there now was built there right on the edge of that. So apparently they were able to control erosion. I had one other question too, but I can't remember it.
While you're thinking of that, I just follow up that staff did consider that concern. There is a cart path that runs below the existing clubhouse, and that area where the patio or transition with retaining walls down to the cart path would occur has already been disturbed and is it's not sort of cutting into a new slope, I would say. So we took that into account, and we think that their plans, they can manage that issue, and we'll get details on that with a land use permit anyways.
Would anybody like to speak in favor of this application?
I'm Angela Poppenhagen. I will just say that obviously this is a premier golf course, and with any golf course to thrive, you need to offer, other things like an event center and offer simulators. And this would be a shame if it doesn't go through, because this is as I said, a premier golf course for our area and brings in a lot of public for this. And we also are right in a commercial area, so as far as traffic, that road is already designed to handle the traffic, and there's no impacts to residents in the area. the residents that are there are built on a golf course, and I'm sure they love it. So, nothing else, unless you have any questions.
I remembered my question.
Yes.
Out of curiosity, reference was made a couple times to prior applications for conditional use permits. Has this always been under the same ownership?
As I say, I'd have to look. I believe it's been under the same ownership for some time, yes. For the 25 years or close? Since 2004, okay. So it's been under the same ownership.
Okay.
I actually didn't know. So thank you for the help.
There were some other parties involved when it was established in the early years.
Does anybody else wish to speak in favor of this application? How about anybody who want to speak about this application, whether they're for or against, or neutral, or anything else? No? I'm on the verge of closing the hearing, which means no more testimony, no more exhibits, and proceeding to a decision with potential dialogue only with the staff. That doesn't seem to threaten anyone, so I hereby declare the hearing closed at 12:16. Yeah, thank you for staying. Yep. Well, I make a motion to adopt the staff proposal. And while the motion is pending, we'll see if we get a second, why, then we'll take discussion.
Yes, I'll second it.
Ms. Denzer?
Supervisor Malik, I'm sorry, or Board Chair Malik.
Whatever you are, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but I did have another meeting I had to be in this morning. And I just wanted to ask how you determined that we have a quorum present. When I read your rules and bylaws, I'm not sure that this is a quorum can make a decision.
Well, then we'll take a vote, and you can send it to the Corporation Council, and if we don't have enough, we'll have to reconvene for this and the other one.
Okay, I did go and try to ask Corporation Council, who happens to be in a meeting right now, if you wanted to wait. They were going to try to send a electronic message and get an answer shortly, if you wanted to wait. But if you don't, I just thought I would give you those pieces of information.
She doesn't have the ability to manufacture another person, so.
Nope, she does not.
And I let Joe go home. He had to recuse himself for this one. Yeah. Any further discussion, Mr. Nickum? If not, all in favor will vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. The two votes present are both aye votes. So, we previously talked about whether there were other matters to deal with of a procedural nature and concluded that there were not. Therefore, we're at the end of today's agenda, and we can declare victory and go home at 12:18. I hereby declare us adjourned. Okay.